The YouTube Game and Video Guide is available now. Use this learning resource to learn all about video editing, video recording, 3D modeling, visual effects composition, film and video history, and everything else you need to get started creating YouTube videos. There is currently a 90% discount coupon in the description of this video, so grab your copy of the guide right now. How's it going, guys? It's the final render here, and welcome back to another episode of Fallout 4 Building with Mods. In this episode, we have come to the lovely town of Concord, so we can do some work on the fantastic Museum of Freedom. The Museum of Freedom is a building that you'll probably find very early on in the game in Fallout 4, and it is where you will first meet the Minutemen, along with Preston Garvey and all of his little posse of followers. And it is an interesting place because most of the stuff in this building is restorable to old-fashioned, and seeing as it is me, the final render, I have taken it upon myself to give myself the challenge of trying to restore the Museum of Freedom back to its original glory. So, take a trip down memory lane with me so we can go ahead and see what it's like going back into the past. So here we are inside the Museum of Freedom, people. The Museum of Freedom is obviously a very important part of the Fallout 4 universe, and of course it is a very important part of Boston. The Museum of Freedom is an icon for everything that occurred in Boston during the American War of Independence, and it really has got an awful lot of history in this building of tourists coming to flock here to see some of the history of the United States of America. But unfortunately, the place has come run down. It has been infested with raiders over hundreds of years, and also, of course, atomic war really didn't do the place any favours either. So therefore, it is our task to go ahead and restore this place back to its original glory, or at least as best we can, given what we have got using the creation kit. So, with that being said, let's pull up our sleeves and get ready to restore this place, and this is definitely the biggest restoration project I have taken on in Fallout 4. So jumping into the creation kit now, it is time to get to work. So tell me this, people, when you decide to live in a completely run down old museum, what's the first thing you do? Firstly, you get rid of all the debris, and that is what we have got to do first, and it is a mammoth task. There is so much debris and destroyed furniture in this place, it is absolutely unreal. But with the creation kit, we can go ahead and clean up all the debris and start to restore all of the walls and floors back to their original clean variants. Now, it is true that you can go ahead and swap all of the textures in Fallout 4 for the models and the environment. However, not every object has a clean variant. Only certain ones do. However, luckily, everything in the Museum of Freedom location-wise has a clean variant. So it basically means we can go ahead and clear up all of the broken areas and make them clean and fresh and new again, which is absolutely fantastic. It is really interesting to see just how much a place changes when you get rid of all of the broken debris. And as you can see, just with changing the foyer here, everything looks so much better and nicer, and it starts to resemble what it probably would have looked like in modern times. I've actually never been to the Museum of Freedom myself, seeing as I live in the UK, so I imagine it's actually going to be quite interesting to see what you guys think who may have actually been there think of this restoration. And of course, an interesting thing about this place is that it is huge. There is 3 stories here in order to completely restore, and every single section needs to be tackled with the exact same amount of detail. And the interesting thing about this place as well is that there are an awful lot of sections of this museum that you, the player, might not have actually seen. There are a lot of rooms which you are very unlikely to go into. When you first come here, there are a lot of locked doors, and lots of the debris is actually blocking certain paths, so you might not actually be able to access everything, or at least try to access everything on your first playthrough. So when you come here in the restored version, a lot of these rooms are now easily accessible, and I didn't actually realise how big this place was until I started to actually restore it. As I said, there are so many rooms which I never actually stepped foot in because I either couldn't or I didn't need to for the quest, because the quest does a really good job of making you navigate a very specific path to where there are lots of enemies and where there are lots of little scripted events, so the lights come on and sounds start to play as you go through the museum. So it was really interesting to go back and see some of these areas which I just completely missed. And of course we are now just finishing up the second foyer area here, which has the stairs which lead to the upper sections of the museum. And there is a huge amount of space in here. When there is all the clutter and all the debris in here, you don't realise just how much space there is in this place, so that we can really do a lot of work decorating with this later. And one thing which really took a lot of time was restoring all of the railings and all of the scaffolding areas to go to the upper sections. Every single floor has a bridge going across. However, some of these sections you either can't get to because they're destroyed, or they're completely blocked off by enemies, so you decide to go around instead. So going ahead and restoring all of these bridges means it is much easier to access all of the different parts of the museum, and it actually makes doing the first quest a little bit easier, if I'm completely honest. I did test the original quest when you first come here. I started a new game to test it. This mod does not affect that first quest at all. It still works perfectly fine, which is fantastic. And here I am restoring some of the other empty rooms here, and I do need your feedback for this, people, because this is going to be a two-part video, because there are going to be lots of sections which I'm going to leave untouched, because I want to know, do you guys want to see a completely restored version of the museum? Or do you want to see a highly fortified, very unique Minuteman headquarters? Because then the Minutemen have got a headquarters at Castle, and they've got one at the Museum of Freedom, which I think would be very, very fitting. However, I want you guys' feedback as to what you would like to see in a video. One thing I did do as well is that I tried to put a lot of attention onto making certain sections not the exact same wallpaper. I decided to change a lot of the wallpaper so that every kind of room or every kind of floor feels a bit different. So here we have got lots of blue wallpaper, for example, to make it look a bit neater. And here we have got some red, just to kind of give it a bit more flavour and to kind of make it feel like a bit more of a realistic place. Because when you have the same wallpaper everywhere, it starts to feel almost too big in a way. It feels like you've got this huge vast array of places and it's almost impossible to really navigate in a way. But if you change the wallpaper to have certain unique colours for certain hallways, it feels a bit more manageable. And of course here we are, we can see the section where we meet up with Preston Garvey. Not much could be done with this place, unfortunately, because a lot of the walls are all part of the same model. However, I was able to restore it pretty nicely. And of course there is still a lot of space up here as well, so we can do a lot here, but I couldn't do too much at the same time because there are a lot of scripted areas in here where certain NPCs lean on certain objects and stuff. But I think I did a good job in the end of making it look clean and restored. And here we are with all of the hallways and all of the bridges fully restored. I decided to leave the crashed vertibird up there because not only could I not replace the broken glass on the ceiling, but also, it doesn't really make sense for the quest if they say there's a crashed vertibird on the roof, but you can't actually see the crashed vertibird from the inside. Doesn't really make much sense, so I left that in there. And going up into the main hallway at the top as well, you can see that this place looks largely the same. However, the lighting is very different, and also the place starts to feel a lot bigger, which is definitely a nice thing. However, there is still lots of potential for this place to go ahead and restore some of the rooms and give them kind of a new function, because when you actually start to look at these rooms, a lot of these rooms don't actually have much function. You know, some of the upper floors, for example, they've just got a load of tables and chairs in them for no apparent reason. It's not an office, there aren't computers or anything, so it's just kind of an empty room. So that is something we could definitely do in the future as well. And now we're going to try to make the place look a bit prettier. I'm going to have an awful lot of carpeting and rug in here so that we can go ahead and almost kind of channel the guests to go a certain route so that they can actually see all of the exhibits on the bottom floor of the museum. And also, again, since everything looks very similar when you restore everything to clean, it starts to feel a bit too big. But when you actually add all of these carpets in, it's a lot nicer on the eye. It starts to feel a bit more homely. And of course, downstairs, there is actually a huge workshop area, which you can only walk around in like 4 or 5 feet because it's so full of debris you can hardly walk around. But when you clear out all the stuff, you've got a huge amount of space in here. It is absolutely enormous when you clear out all of the space. And now I'm actually able to add lots of storage areas in here. And the idea with this was to kind of show you what we could do with the creation kit when we decide to add some more function. But of course I want your guys' feedback as to whether you want the rest of the place to be done as a creation kit build, which obviously means you can download the finished part, or you want to see it as a completely restored settlement build video, because some people do prefer the settlement build videos. This section, however, I did put some attention in. I decided to add some little display cases so that we can see some of the weapons that help win America freedom, not just in the olden days, but also in the modern days we're currently in. There's lots of laser rifles and stuff in there, which the Minutemen would be using to restore freedom back to the Commonwealth. And here we are in the main foyer. It looks absolutely fantastic. We've got some statues of some of the forefathers. We've got some power armor, which of course wouldn't have been there in the current Museum of Freedom, but it probably would have been there before the bombs dropped, seeing as power armor was a huge asset in the Battle of Anchorage, which actually led to the nuclear atomic wars. And we've also got a cool display of a statue with a fan underneath it, blowing a cool flag, which looks really nice. And here we are in the section which could use some more display cabinets in here. There is definitely a lot more we can do with this room, but the display cabinets look fantastic. They look very subtle, but they really do look like good museum pieces to illustrate just how cool some of the weapons look in Fallout 4. And here we are in the workshop area. Looks much better now. There is a lot more space and it's much more organized. It looks much more believable, I think, which is definitely something I want to do with this restoration, trying to make the place not only look new but also believable. But as you can see here is some of the empty rooms which have been tidied up. There's actually not much in those rooms, so there is a huge amount of work we can do with these empty rooms should we decide to make it either a museum or to make it a Minuteman headquarters. So guys, that is the end of part 1, which was the restoration part of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to check out part 2 when it is released, and of course this restored version is available for download on the Nexus and Bethesda.net. So guys, leave your comments. What shall we do in part 2? Minuteman headquarters or museum? Until next time, see you around. The YouTube Gaming Video Guide is available now. Use this learning resource to learn all about video editing, video recording, 3D modeling, visual effects composition, film and video history, and everything else you need to get started creating YouTube videos. There is currently a 90% discount coupon in the description of this video, so grab your copy of the guide right now.